You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Donna Rosa, the CEO of EFour, which stands for Empowering Entrepreneurs in Emerging Economies. And she coaches entrepreneurs in developing countries. And Donna is also heavily involved in international food safety. And she was honored the IFT's Humanitarian Award for service in the science of food. So welcome, Donna.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So I had you on because I was curious and fascinated with your work in coaching people in emerging and developing countries, or emerging markets and developing countries, and also your work with international food safety. So tell us a little bit about who you're working with, in which kinds of countries, and what you're needing to help them with.
Okay, well, I'll start on the entrepreneurship side. They're a little bit separate. I work remotely mostly, so I can work with anybody that has an internet connection and a computer. But I'm hired by organizations that want to develop entrepreneurship in certain countries or certain areas. Most of my work happens to be in Africa, not by design, but that's where most of the projects are. So I'll be on the phone or on Zoom with somebody in Nigeria or somebody in Uganda or somebody in Tanzania or whatever, and I'm helping them with their business. So the organization has a group of entrepreneurs that they want to develop. So they tell me, okay, here's, work with this one or that one or whatever. And they need a business plan, or they need a strategy, or they need help with their business, or they don't know how to, keep track of their finance, or whatever it is. And so it's very much a personal one-on-one kind of thing.
Okay, that's fascinating. So how did you get into this work?
Yeah, I spent most of my career in the corporate world, in the food industry. And I just sort of woke up one day and realized that I had accumulated a lot of business skills. And I just wanted to, I literally said to myself, I can die with this in my head, or I could share it with people who most need these skills. I had no idea how to go about doing that. Zero. And I spent a lot of time researching, and eventually I found out, I started, I got toward the international development or aid community. And I found out that there was something called SME development, which is small and medium enterprises. And I found out that there was something called business development services, and that I could, in fact, find a way to help these small businesses through international development.
That's fascinating.
So it was a complete, the corporate world and development couldn't be more different.
Okay, let's talk about that. What are the challenges that people over in those countries are facing?
These people, they start businesses, many of them, through necessity. There's no jobs, especially in these rural areas. There's no jobs. No one's going to pay, or hire them. So they have to start a business. They have to figure out how to sell something. So they have to start a small business. They have no skills. No one's taught them anything about business or how to do it. They have no money. They don't have any resources to do much of anything. And they face a lot of things that we take for granted, like infrastructure. Like they don't have good, even, digital communications, or they don't have good internet, or they can't afford a phone, or the electricity's going off and on all day long. There's a lot of things that we don't even think about, that they don't have SCORE or an SBA to help them, get started in a business. Like they're out there on their own without any support, and they don't, think about starting a business and you don't know anything. You don't know where to go. And they can't get funding. They don't qualify for any kind of funding. So,
Well, that's a good point, because we take so much for granted. So imagine starting a business and your electric's going on and off, and you may or may not even have electricity for a computer, not connected to internet. Like, let's just say you just want to write
Yeah.
a document, not connected. So you're being continually interrupted,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And that must be quite frustrating. So interesting, because when you look at Americans, we take it for granted and we throw a hissy fit if our internet goes off for about a minute
Yeah.
because we're all so connected. So it's another whole level of hardship and challenge. Okay, so give me an example of one client that you're working with that you were really successful with.
I just nearly, I'm just pretty much complete, working with an entrepreneur who is starting up an agribusiness, and he is supporting women and youth farmers. And he's got a whole program where he's providing packages of poultry, chickens, and vegetable seeds and maize seeds. And we wrote a business plan together, and he did an outstanding job on it. Like, he really put his heart and soul into it. It's taken us months. So he's just now at the point where he's going to go out and seek funding, or he started a little bit. He's a finalist in one of the competitions, and I think he'll get some money through that. But he wrote a really, really good. He was very diligent and wrote a good business plan, and I think he'll get funding.
Okay, so you were helping him to write the business plan to potentially get funding from some government source in the country he's in.
Right.
What country is he in?
He's in Tanzania. And it could be a government source. It could be an NGO, a nonprofit. It could be, there are these philanthropic organizations that have these programs. There are donor organizations from other countries like Germany and Australia and UK and others who make these programs available.
Okay, now let's talk about US aid. You were saying something's happened with that recently. What has happened?
So when Doge came in and started tearing things apart, I'm just going to put it that way, the first thing that they did was they dismantled USAID.
So this is very recent.
Yeah, in January it started. So Elon Musk went in over a weekend and he started what he called, quote unquote, putting it through the wood chipper. I spent the weekend putting USAID through the wood chipper. I could go on and on about that, but this is an organization that they know nothing about or about what it's done. They're calling people criminals, and so essentially they have done a review and they cut, I think, 82% of the programs, the aid programs.
Okay, so USAID had programs in Africa to
elsewhere, all over.
Right, but specific all over to specifically give money to these countries to help with various things, but one of them was on entrepreneurship.
Yeah, one of them was entrepreneurship. Actually, that's a very small part. They do a lot with food security, with nutrition.
Right. Now you're a food security expert because you were telling me before that's where you came from. That's your background, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit of your background and how you got into this, what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I sort of grew up. My degree was in food and nutrition. So I spent a lot of time in the food industry, but that was here in the United States. But I always had an interest in global food security and people who cannot get enough food to eat. It's just not there. And if they're getting food, it's not very good quality food. It's starchy. It's, not nutritious.
It's just corn, probably something like that. Yeah.
Things like corn and cassava and things like that. So, I do what I can to help create sources of food, grow more food, waste less food, create food that's safer, create food that's more nutritious, and get it to the people. I think everybody should have enough food to eat because we have enough food on the planet.
Well, I think everybody should have enough water too, clean water.
And water, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm fascinated by this. Well, you said it that not everybody has enough food. We're talking about abundance all the time, but some people just aren't eating and they don't have clean water. So how are you? I'm always curious as to the nuts and bolts, like how actually are you helping them create food sources? What are you actually doing? quite fascinating if you can single-handedly help do that. What have you done that has created food sources for these people?
I've worked on projects that it's nothing I can do by myself, but I've worked on projects that helped, for example, mostly agribusiness projects. They're whole big projects that involve lots of people and lots of money. But what they try and do is either help farmers grow more food, help them process food into value added products rather than just commodities. You don't get a lot of money selling commodities. Put that food or grow that food in areas where they can't grow a lot or they don't grow a lot of food. Grow things that are nutritious rather than starch.
Right. So you have helped them actually allocate lands to growing new food.
I wasn't allocating land, but I was helping with the businesses that were doing that.
You were helping the business. So yeah, you
Yeah.
were. So did it work? Did you actually coach people or help businesses that then created more food?
Yeah. When you do this, you can only make a little bit of difference at a time. You can't just turn it from, 0 to 180. But I helped work with small companies that are creating these foods in lots of different ways. Like I'll coach I'll coach the entrepreneurs. I'll work with the business owner. I'll work with employees, how to do their job better, advise them on how to just operate better with my food background.
Okay, so tell me what is going on with the food safety? And I guess it's different in every country, but what's going on there? Is the food not hygienic, not good, not enough? What are the problems?
Yeah, they're really, I would say the big thing they're suffering from right now is climate change. Either we talked about water, either there's too much water and areas are getting flooded, or there's drought areas and they're not getting enough water to grow things. And this is making a huge impact on people's food sources. People, we don't really hear about it here, but
No, we don't. What are we not hearing? That's what I want to know.
yeah, we're not hearing about starvation and famine in Sudan, in different areas. It's there. A lot of it has to do with civil unrest, with civil wars. People in a war zone don't don't have food sources, and they don't have often the skills to grow it properly either. Like there's ways to make land more fertile, to irrigate and whatever, and they just don't know this stuff.
Oh, so they just need need some teaching and coaching on that,
Yeah, and money, to support that. But
right?
it's climate change more than anything, I think, and waste.
Right. It's funny though, but usually people who have no food don't waste it.
Well, I'm talking about what's called post-harvest waste. So they will grow. Everybody is going to grow corn at one time. They call it maize. And then there's a harvest. And then there's a glut of maize on the market, and they can't get very much for it. So they sell what they can. The rest of it goes bad. It sits in the field and it literally rots. That's the kind of waste. It's not post-consumer waste like we have. It's post-harvest waste. It goes bad again because they can't process those tomatoes into tomato puree or canned tomatoes or whatever. They just go bad.
So they need education on how to use the food and preserve it and use it later.
And money to do it. Like they can't
Money
just
to
set
do
up
it.
a
Yes,
canning operation.
that's
You
true.
know what I mean?
There's no cans and no nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like there's also the money problem of
Yeah.
money to make that happen.
Mm.
Do you often travel to Africa or do you do all of this remote?
I used to travel to Africa when I first started doing this. And I'm doing most of it remote now, especially working with entrepreneurs because I can do it through Zoom. So mostly now it's remote advisory.
Right. So all the people that you work with have internet.
It's really grown a lot. I started this in 2015, 2014, 2015. And, at that time, there wasn't a lot of internet access, but I've seen it grown. But even the access that's there isn't often very good. But I am able to do it remotely now.
can you help less now that the U.S. aid has been withdrawn to some degree?
You know what I'm doing more of is mentoring. There are mentoring programs, and by mentoring, I say it's pro bono. Coaching, I consider, a paid thing. But there are organizations out there with mentoring programs, and FAO is one, the Food and Agricultural Organization. That's one that I'm involved in. And so I'm doing more pro bono work, which I don't really mind, these people need help, and there's lots of those programs out there. So I'm focusing on that right now.
Okay, so why don't we, for people that are interested and are loving this and want to help, and by the way, people, there's also organizations in America that like SCORE mentorship. I was a SCORE mentor,
Exactly.
etc. But if you did feel so moved to help somebody in other countries, then what are some of the names of these organizations, and how can people find those, Donna?
Yeah. So you can volunteer for some of these organizations. There's something called VC4A. It's a venture capital for Africa. And you can volunteer to be a mentor. There's something called Micro Mentor, and that is you can volunteer to be a mentor that way. There are also foundations that support entrepreneurship, like the Visa Foundation, the MasterCard Foundation, the Sherry Blair Foundation. And you have to find the ones that focus on entrepreneurship if that's what you want to do. And you can either donate to them or you can donate your time. In some cases, they have different ways to engage. So just do some research and find an organization that fits with what you want to do and what sings to you.
Well, those are a few. I had not heard of those, so I hope that people take note of those and reach out.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what's going on with the food over there? Apart from the wastage, what's going on as far as the safety part?
Well, food safety is part of the whole food security issue, but it's a really significant and large part. A lot of these countries don't have good rules in place to ensure food safety. And if you think about all the ways that your food can get contaminated and get unsafe and spoil and whatever, so that's a really important part of it. And there's things that we can do to help. For example, peanuts are grown around Africa and other countries as well. It's pretty much a staple food in many countries. They are notorious for an organism called aflatoxin. It's a deadly mold that will kill you. And so here we eat peanut butter. We don't think about it because that's controlled for. But when you're growing it out in the middle of nowhere and the crop gets moist and it's not dried properly, it will grow this mold. And if you eat it, you will get either paralyzed or you could die from it. It's extremely dangerous. And so that's one food safety. There's lots of programs going on to, how do we address aflatoxin for all these countries that are growing? It grows on other things as well. I'm just talking about peanuts now, but it grows on other things.
Okay, so that's so fascinating. I did know that peanuts were very susceptible to mold. And I think I also know that the peanut butter in this country does have mold in it, but it's not the one that we're going to die of.
Yeah, well, we have standards where it can't be over a certain amount.
It can only have a certain amount of mold, and it has to be a certain type of mold that's not going to kill you. Still not good for you. Okay.
Exactly.
So, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's highly interesting. So Donna, thank you for sharing that all with us. So what's something you want to leave with the listeners as far as mindset or anything you want to share before we close off?
Yeah, I would say to think broadly, and think about those in other countries that don't have what you have, and how can you help them? There's lots of ways to help. This is what I do because I like working with entrepreneurs. But think about, how you can contribute in some small way. So that's the impact part of this podcast.
That's the impact part of it. Yes. Well, no, I think it's just very interesting to speak with somebody that's actually helping, and it's a very concrete thing. You gave us links. If somebody is so moved, again, I think it's wonderful to help other countries. And there's a lot of help we need in this country, by the way. Now, but let's go there. Are you involved in this kind of thing for Americans that don't eat? Because there's a lot of Americans who don't eat.
Yeah. I tend to focus more on international, and it's only because that's where my interest is. Somebody wants to save the whales, or somebody, like everybody has their own, my sister is, volunteers for, animal welfare and whatever. It just happens to be my interest. I'm really interested in the cultures, the things that I learn as I'm working with these entrepreneurs. So I focus on international. But yes, there's plenty of things, especially now, again, with USAID going away, they were supporting a lot of food banks. And those food banks are wondering where their money's going to come from. And that's right here in the United States. And we have a lot of people that need those food banks. So there's definitely a need for that here in the States as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for enlightening us, Donna. And thank you for listening, everybody. If you like this show, why don't you share it with somebody and write a nice review and share us with the world. And we'll see you on the next one. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.